Hello there, fellow cultists. This is DM Nell, and I'm back with another Shadow of the Demon Lord talk. And in this episode, we'll be talking about the Tombs of the Desolation. So this is my second take, so I'm going to try to change things up from my first take because I did half the video, and then the other half, there was no sound for some reason. So in the event that you watched the first half of the last video, I think there was a handful of people that actually got to see it before I took the video down. I'll try not to be too repetitive here, but in this video I wanted to cover this particular supplement because it is one of the first ones that came out that detailed a section of the campaign world, and that was, just kind of touched on in the core rulebook, but the supplement is designed to really kind of expand on it so that you can take your game into this region and have some interesting region-specific things happen to your characters in your game. So, Tombs of Desolation, kind of along the same vein as the last video I did, Terrible Beauty. And it's in a series of supplements that I will continue doing videos on. The next couple, I think, are going to be Exquisite Agony and Glorious Death. I'm not really sure which one I'll do next. But at any rate, Tombs of Desolation. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at an awesome cover by Jack Kaiser, I think. Yep. And we have a black pyramid here, and we have a few people going towards it in a sandstorm. So that's the Desolation, basically. You got black pyramids everywhere, you got undead, and you got stupid adventurers that think they can find some cool stuff in there. So what's in this book? Well, there's all kinds of cool stuff in this book, but before I start going through it, I want to say that the first thing that this really evoked in my imagination really took me back to the 80s cartoon Thundercats, and this guy, Mumra the Everliving, or is it the Everlasting? Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, it's Mumra, and I think it's the Everliving. And this is his Everliving form, and then, of course, you got the old and decrepit form that he starts off at, this dude. But he goes from that to that. And of course, in the animatic, you have to have the upskirt shot here. I'm not really sure why the animators got off on that, but anyway, you have, his powered up form, and he was a badass in this form. He was more like a lich or a mummy, I guess more like a mummy, sorcerer mummy in that form. Here's another look at him. But anyway, that's what this whole setting kind of reminded me of when it first came out, which kind of drew me to it. And I was anxious to get the supplement, but the funny thing is I haven't used it really much since it's come out, simply because I haven't really had any adventures in the Desolation or a campaign set in the Desolation. I plan to one of these days, but I just haven't gotten there yet. So I'll talk a little bit about how this supplement can be used and what I plan on using it for, hopefully, somewhere down the road. All right, so let's move on to what this book entails. Here's all the credits. We got Rob Schwab as the writer, cast of thousands or three. Editing, Jennifer Clark Wilkes, proofreading, Kara Hamilton, and then the artist. You got Jack Kaiser, the cover illustrator, and some interior illustrations, Britt Martin and Todd Wilson, and then Cecil Howe doing the cartography. So thanks to all you guys for putting your hard work into this book. And it starts off with talking about the type of people that actually live in the Desolation. So it's mostly humans, and most of the humans that call the Desolation home are descendants of the Men of Gog. Now, I did a video on the Men of Gog because there was a supplement that came out called the Men of Gog. And it really went into a whole lot of detail about the Men of Gog, where they originated, how they originated, and they came from the Desolation. So a lot of that background was covered in that video if you want to go back and check that out. I'm not going to rehash it. But in current times, a lot of the people that currently live in the Desolation are descended from the men of Gog. So they have the chalky skin, they got dark circles under their eyes, and they got birthmarks that kind of resemble like arcane writing in some kind of unknown language. Then you've got the other races that are listed here. Dwarves are mostly in the Crusader Stage, which we'll talk about some more in a bit. Orcs, again, probably mostly found in the Crusader States. And the other ancestries are just going to be a spattering here and there. There's not a whole lot of people in the Desolation that are living anyway. Because it's a desert and it's fucking hot. And, better places to live. But of the people that choose to live there for whatever reason, you're going to find a little bit of just about everybody, mostly humans, and mostly descendants of the men of God. So that's what these paragraphs talk about. You got a new interesting thing table here. I'm not going to go through that. Then you have new ancestries. So you have Revenant, which is a form of undead ancestry that you can play. It's not really undead. They're technically a living creature, but they're kind of got one foot out the door, so to speak. And so a revenant is a creature that is kind of driven by some kind of unfulfilled purpose in life. And so until they fulfill that purpose, they keep coming back and coming back and coming back. So as long as their head is still attached to their body, they keep coming back. And that's kind of outlined here in their statistics. You start off as a human or a dwarf or an orc character in order to be able to become a revenant. You start off as a living creature, and then at some point you die, and you come back as a revenant. Now, you can actually start your adventuring career as a revenant if you want, if your GM allows you to. I personally would not do that. I would rather see a revenant start off as a normal character, die, and then come back using the optional rising from the dead, having them come back to fulfill whatever purpose they had in life that remained unfulfilled. So some of their abilities include Dark Sight, Eternal Returns, which means that they, when they're incapacitated, they are dead for basically 1 to 3 hours, and then at the end of the time, they come back to life. 1 foot in the grave means that they only heal half as much from magic and from potions. And then Eyes of the Underworld is kind of an ability they have to cause fear in other living creatures. So that's the Revenant ancestry. Pretty cool. I dig it. I'd allow it in my game. So let's see what's next here. There's the random tables that you're going to find. Causes of death. How were you killed? If you actually start off as a revenant, how were you killed? You can determine that through this table. The reason for your return. If you don't have that already outlined, you can roll it randomly here, and then distinguishing features. What makes your revenant different from other things out there, I guess other revenants, I don't know. Did you pick up some unusual behavior when you became a revenant? Probably. It's a bit jarring, I would imagine, going from dead to not dead. But, whatever quirks you pick up, here's a table to figure that out. All right, salamanders. Salamanders are descended from genies. Genies, as you know, are the creatures that actually created everything. They created the world, they created the universe, they created this, that, and the other thing, and they didn't do it alone. It's a lot of work, so a lot of the grunt work. They created these mortal creatures, which are known as the elementals, and one of those elemental races include the salamander. These are the fire or the fire. These are the elementals that are affiliated or that have an affinity with fire, and so these guys did the the work on the volcanoes. The interiors of the world were really hot, and that sort of stuff. So talks about that here. Talks about them being slaves of the genies, and then when the genies went nuts, they kind of were left on their own, and they just kind of procreated and became their own species. And it talks about their personalities. They're intense people, very passionate. They're prone to fits of anger and emotion. So that's their personality. Then you go into how you create a salamander. Some of their cool stuff. They're immune to disease, fire, and poison. So that's cool. They're intolerant to cold. That's not cool. They take double damage, and they become fatigued when exposed to cold. So not cool there. But they do radiate heat. So if they happen to have somebody in like a wrestling hold or something, if they maintain that hold at the end of the round, then the creature takes heat damage by being in such close proximity. 1d3. It's not a whole lot, but still. And then when they die, they kind of explode in a burst of fire, which punishes creatures in looks like a number of yards equal to your group level. So if you're a 5th level salamander, when you die at 5th level, then for 5 yards going out from you, boom, you supernova and burn everything out to 5 yards. So that's pretty cool. Then as an expert, you have Scorching Reprisal. When you become injured, then you can cause a burst of flame to go out and punish those creatures around you as well. So dig those powers for the salamander. Pretty cool. Very, very appropriate, I would say. Then you got the random tables for age, personality, appearance. You can kind of see what a salamander looks like here. Lots of spines coming off of them, horns on the head, reddish skin. They go shirtless because they're sporting the 6-pack and the pectoral muscles. Pectoral muscles. That was a terrible Ren imitation there. Sorry. Then you have the salamander background, salamander build, and we're done with salamander. So that's an interesting ancestry. I have a salamander currently in one of my campaigns. My daughter is actually running it, and so far hasn't really been too much of a problem. So we're cool. Now this vampire that's coming up here is a bit of a problem, and I'll get to that here in a second. But so. And I understand the reason why Rob Schwab put this into the game, because a lot of people dig vampires, and what's not to dig? They're cool. But as a player character, they're problematic at best. And the reason for that is, well, vampires are evil for the most part. They suck blood out of living creatures. They subsist off of other living creatures. So that makes them kind of inherently viewed as bad guys, even though they may have noble motives or whatever. You may have the good vampires out there, but they still suck blood. So it's kind of hard to just kind of ignore your buddy over here sucking on some dude's neck. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem. So it talks about how vampires are created, how they have a sire, how they're driven by their thirst for blood. They can be feral and monstrous, and so on. Then you go into creating a vampire. So vampires have to be human, can't have any other ancestries be a vampire. That's probably because they were created by the Men of Gog, who created necromancy. Again, this is all covered in the Men of Gog supplement video, but more than likely, that's why only humans can become vampires. And so that's how you start off as a human, and then you become a vampire after some more powerful vampire comes down and decides to make you one. So it says here that they have immunities to cold, disease, poison, and the sleep, disease, fatigue, immobilized, poison, and slowed afflictions. They have dark sight. That's cool. They're sire bound, which means that the vampire that created them, they can't attack them. And they become compelled by them if they are within short range of their master. So that's kind of a problem, especially if their sire is not a good dude. So that could be kind of a interesting role playing predicament if you have the character's sire be one of the bad guys in the campaign. Dreadful appearance. They are kind of creepy, so they can cause a target to be frightened if the target fails a will challenge roll. They do have fangs, so that counts as a natural weapon. They do have an unnatural existence, which means that their healing rate is 0 and cannot be increased above 0. So how do you heal up? Well, you do that with the blood pool. And I'm not going to go through this blood pool, but basically you got a pool of blood points that you have to maintain. You increase or you add to your blood pool by drinking blood, and you heal by spending blood points. And that talks about that a little bit down here in blood healing. When your health goes down to 0, then you fall into a torpor. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I'm going to say torpor because that's how it's spelled. And basically, you go into a state of unconsciousness resembling a corpse. The only way you can snap out of it is somebody feeds you some fresh blood from a living creature. All right, talks about drinking blood here, talks about the superstition. Every vampire has a superstition, and you can roll forward on this table down here or pick, I suppose, typical vampire stuff. You got the symbol of the gods, mirrors, running water, cats, silver, and garlic. Talks about how you can create a vampire, and then you got your random tables here: unusual qualities, sire's identity, sire's motive, relationship to sire, and then you got a nice little picture of a vampire sucking on some dude that hopefully wasn't your buddy or your cousin. All right, so that is the vampire. Now, why are they problematic? Well, for one thing, they tend to burn up in the sun, and I forgot to mention that here, burned by sunlight. So that means that if they're adventuring, it has to be at night, which kind of limits when your party can adventure. So, yeah. Then, of course, they drink blood, which was already, I mentioned, is problematic. But really, the biggest problem is that they're burned by sunlight. Now, if you can figure out a way to have your campaign only occur at night, may not be as much of a problem. But your player might be trying to get by with it, or might be trying to say, well, I'm going to just wear a hooded cloak and I should be good. That's just a little bit too easy. And if you read this, it really doesn't say anything about being able to avoid damage by wearing a cloak. And in fact, it says if you're in an area lit by sunlight, you take the damage. So it doesn't matter for the most part that you're wearing a cloak, you're going to burn up. So you could kind of hand wave that if you want to as a GM, but if you're doing that, you're kind of making it a little bit too easy for them to avoid this pretty big limitation or pretty big weakness. All right, so that's vampires, enough of them. Then you have your new paths here. Starts off with this Prince of Darkness expert path, and this is clearly aimed towards the vampire ancestry. So with this Prince of Darkness, you become more vampire-like by getting some different powers like Misty Escape, Charming Bite. You can get some tolerance to the sun, and you get some resilience here to weapons. So those are pretty cool. Then the next thing here is a master path, and it's the Blighter. Now, this master path is kind of more linked to how the Desolation was created. So to understand how this path works, you have to understand that the Desolation was once a lush, kind of like a tropical, forested setting, and it was basically the victim of ecological damage. It was ecologically murdered, essentially, by the Troll Wars. So back in the day, the fairies and the trolls hated each other, so they were going at it. And most of that happened in this region. And the magic that was unleashed during that time frame, a lot of it had to do with drawing power from the surrounding area, kind of like how the Dark Sun campaign setting works, and how that world was created by drawing energy from the planet. So same concept here. A blighter uses that power of drawing energy from their surroundings in order to power their spell casting. And kind of talks about how that's done here. Gives you back some, when you draw energy, it kills plants within a certain radius around you, and it gives you back some castings that you've lost. So, yeah, you're not going to be viewed very favorably by party members and by people that dig having living things around them. But still, cool concept, blighter. And then we have a Dustwalker. So a Dustwalker is a character that is kind of found a genie to mentor them, but genies are batshit crazy. So in the process of being mentored and understanding the ways of the elementals and gaining some elemental power, they also kind of sacrifice a little bit of their sanity in the process. But as a Dustwalker, you gain the Earthwalker power, which allows you to move full speed across difficult terrain composed of sand, dust, earth, or rocks. Fling dust. Then you can do Dust Storm down here. So basically, this is focused mostly on air and earth traditions. And the powers that you get are affiliated with those. So Dustwalker, not as cool as the others I've mentioned up to this point. And then you have Slayer of the Dead. Slayer of the Dead is basically a Van Helsing type of character. You are hunting undead. You believe undead are abominations, and therefore it's your job to seek them out and to destroy them. So you get some abilities that kind of help you out with doing that. So those are your paths, and then we go into the magic section here, where you have various spells. It starts off with blood spells. Now, blood spells were changed in the that's not it. In the occult philosophy book. It started off here in the supplement as a blood tradition, but then when we moved to the occult philosophy, Mr. Schwab decided to wrap that back into, I believe, the necromancy tradition, or the necromantic tradition. So I believe these spells are now considered necromancy. But I don't think that those spells were ported into here. But it does talk about it right here in Occult Philosophy. Blood Magic. Tombs of Desolation introduced blood as a minor tradition. If you have discovered the necromancy tradition, you count as if you had discovered the blood tradition for purposes of learning new spells. So there you go. So you have a bunch of different blood spells here. Then you've got other spells, some elemental spells for air, Heat Wave, Shimmering Wall, Bind Dust Devil. Then you got celestial spells. The Sun Hammer, that sounds pretty cool. Then you got Curse of the Tomb Kings, that sounds really cool. Curse spell. Earth spells, you create some quicksand, that's pretty awesome. But the granddaddy of spells, I think, in this book is the necromancy spell Lich. That's how I pronounce it. I don't care how you think it's pronounced Lich. So as a Lich, if you have a character that wants to become a Lich, then here's how you do it. You find this rank 6 spell, and you follow these instructions, and then you become a Lich if you survive the process. So if you have a wizard that is kind of wanting to live forever, then this is one path they can take. And it would also be kind of like a quest for them to find a Lich spell. Since it's a rank 6 spell, you're not going to find it just laying in the street. You're actually going to have to quest for it, and most likely it's going to be found in the Desolation in an obsidian pyramid. At least it would be if my campaign. So there you go. And then the last couple spells here, Elemental Adaptation, or Adaptation, and Desiccate. So let's go ahead and move on. So now we talk about the Desolation, how it came into came into being, and talks a little about the Troll Wars here. Talks about the Men of Gog and how they kind of help the process along and all that stuff. Again, I'm not going to rehash that since I did a whole other video about it, but it just kind of talks a little bit more about how the Desolation was created. Then it talks about the different types of terrain that you're going to find in the Desolation, like the Ashen Wastes. You got bone fields, which is sprawling areas that just have basically they're mass graves of bones that can spawn bone machines and bone guards. Then you got the Deadlands, which are areas of dead magic. That's kind of bad news for your casters. You have mud flats, some areas where you got some water and mud and fire kind of mixing together to have some tough mud spots. Then you got the stone plains, wandering dunes, and of course the heat. Heat is a big problem. It's a desert, and there's lots of heat in the desert, especially this desert. So traveling across the desert can cause some heat stroke, some exposure problems, and that's detailed here in this little sidebar. Personally, I would not downplay this. I would actually bring this to the fore. The Desolation is meant to be a pretty horrible place. And so you would want to make it as uncomfortable as possible for your characters to make them want to get the hell out of there the first chance they get. Once they finish whatever quest they're on, get to someplace a little bit more pleasant. In fact, in order to even be able to adventure in this region, what I would personally do is make wearing armor not an option, because if you wear armor and it's 100 plus degrees outside, you're going to be making strength challenge rolls pretty much all day long, and you're going to be getting some fatigue, you're going to be getting some exposure, and it's just going to be a rough time for you in armor. Because if you've ever worn leather and it's 100 degrees outside, yeah, ain't happening, especially if you're doing any type of exertion. Forget about it. All right, so maddening heat. All right. Notable locations. So there are places of interest in the Desolation that you can take your players to. Black Waters is a water-filled crater on the Desolation's edge. It's surrounded by bones and reeks of noxious chemicals. It's poisonous, but after going through the desert, you come across this pool of water. Your characters may be tempted to take a sip. If they do, they're going to regret it. The atmosphere is bad, the water is toxic, and it describes those here. Then you got the Burning Vaults. Burning Vaults, and I guess I should probably show you a map. So while I pull that up here on my other screen, let me just talk about the Burning Vaults. So the Burning Vaults are a string of mountains and volcanoes that kind of border the western edge of the Desolation. And so lots of volcanic activity, which causes cinder rain. If you get caught in an area that has an eruption, then that could rain down a lot of bad stuff on you and cause your route to be cut off by lava flows. Shoot, if you're caught in the midst of an actual initial volcanic eruption, you could get caught in a pyroclastic flow, which means that you'll probably be fried right down to the bone. That's not fun. So yeah, bad stuff. But those are the Burning Vaults. You got steam vents and you have tremors. There is a city that's located in these Burning Vaults, a city of salamanders, because they dig that stuff. It doesn't bother them. This is stuff they're made of. So they dig the fire, and so they got a nice little city of black stone, and they call it Fireheart. And it is jutting out of the side of Mount Wrath, which I don't think is listed on any of the maps, so you can kind of pick where that's at. But let me show you on my Northern Reach map. Pull this over here. All right. So let's just kind of Scooch this over, and all right. So we have the Desolation here. Burning Vaults over here on the western side, and then you got a nice little desert region. Kind of goes all the way across from coast to coast, and then you have the borderlands here where the Crusader states are, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. All right, so getting back to this, Fireheart would be once again located somewhere over here, and I'd probably put it right there, smack dab in the middle of these volcanoes somewhere. Why not? All right, so that is the Burning Vaults. Now the Crusader states. So the Crusader states they were kind of talked about in the core rulebook. There's a little bit more information here, but really not a whole lot. As far as I know, there's only one Crusader state that is featured in another supplement, and it's actually an adventure. And it's the Martyr's Point, I believe, is the one that is featured in that particular adventure, which not remembering what that adventure was called. Let's see if I can locate it real quickly here. And I believe it was an expert adventure. Measure of Faith, yeah. So Martyr's Point is featured in a Measure of Faith. So you got a little bit more detail there. But for the most part, the Crusader states are kind of virgin territory for DMs out there. You can kind of flesh them out based on the little information that's provided in this supplement. But it does talk about High Watch. And let's just kind of follow along here. So High Watch is way over here by the Iron Peaks. Then you have Vanguard, which is next. Vanguard is the commander of oh, there's Black Waters right there. Cool. Vanguard is commanded by an ancient clockwork named Angel. So that's kind of cool. Said to be one of the oldest clockworks. So you could probably make something of that. Then you got Neverfall here. What's interesting about Neverfall? Neverfall has twins commanding, Harry and Mildred Veld. They command a force of 100 Crusaders who wear the black of the Citadel and decorate their armor with bits of bone taken from the undead they've cut down. So that's interesting. All right, so they're brother and sister, but there's some rumors that they're a little bit more than that, so that's kind of creepy. All right, so then we have, that's Neverfall. Then we have Martyr's Point, and then we have we already talked about High Watch. Then we have Westhold. Now, Westhold is my favorite because it is the westernmost Crusader state, which means it's way out there in the frontier, and basically nobody's watching them. So the Westhold is manned by orcs, and I kind of took it upon myself to make the area around Westhold kind of like the Wild West. So you've got firearms as the preferred weapons. You've got cowboys. You've got you don't have Native Americans or Indians. Rather, you have men of Gog and troglodytes instead. But and undead, of course, as the problem that the people that live in this region have to contend with. So there you go. One of these days I'm going to do a campaign, and it's going to be featured in Westhold, and it's going to be a Weird West campaign using Shadow the Demon Lord, and it'll be set in this world. And I've actually kind of toyed with it a little bit already, but I have to kind of tweak it more and perfect it. Haven't quite ironed out all the wrinkles just yet. All right, moving on, we got some more features you can find in the Desolation Driftstone. So you got a nice little picture here. Floating big chunks of earth. They're just kind of floating around each other. Looks like some structures are built. Looks like some of them have been tied together. This looks like a cool place to have a dungeon or some kind of adventure to find your way up there. May dig around inside of these. Maybe the big bad guy, big boss is on one of these driftstones. Lots of cool imagery here that can evoke some fantastic adventures for your group. Black pyramids, or pyramids made of black stone, and most of them are buried under the sands, or at least partially, buried. But they're there, and they all house pretty powerful and nasty things. So definitely adventure locales, and most definitely a place that you're going to find not only lots of undead, but you're also going to find lots of men of God treasure. So, something else you're going to run across if you spend any time in the Desolation is you're going to catch a glimpse of this Vanishing City. So this is a city that kind of will be there 1 minute and gone the next. And the reason for that is it's actually a hidden fairy kingdom. And that hidden fairy kingdom is starting to lose its magic because the Desolation kind of short circuits magic. And since it's located in the area of the Desolation, then the Desolation is causing it to short circuit. So that's why it's blinking kind of in and out of existence. And one of these days, it's just going to plop out of its hidden kingdom, and bam, it's going to be right there in the middle of the Desolation. And that's going to be a sad day for all those fairies that live there, because all the undead are just going to swarm and have lots of fairy brains for dinner that day. Send more fairies is the term that I keep hearing going through my head right at the moment. All right, Whisper Canyon is another place that you can send your PCs to. Lots of troglodytes there, so that could be another place to harangue your players. All right, so what else we got? Weather in the Desolation. Here's a little table on weather, and again, I would not shortchange the weather in the Desolation. Play this out. Make sure they encounter dust storms. Make sure they encounter brutal heat. Make sure they encounter strong winds. You can break it up with the mild heat and normal conditions, but they have to experience the bad stuff in order to really get the flavor of the Desolation in there. So, in fact, I wouldn't even roll on here, because the way I roll, I would roll, mild heat one day and then normal conditions the next day, and then mild heat again. That's just how I roll. If I try to randomize something, I get the worst results that exist on the table. So I would just pick it personally. Today, you got brutal heat. Tomorrow, you got a dust storm. The next day, you got a dust storm. And then the next day, you've got brutal heat and a dust storm. So yeah, just make it tough. Then you have interesting features. So if you are having them travel through, just roll on this table and find out what interesting things they happen to come across. Things like the blackened bones of some enormous creature, or an obelisk leaning to one side, sinking into the sand or mud, or a petrified tree. Lots of cool things on this table that they can run across. All right, so then we get into Secrets of the Desolation, and this is where we start talking about how you can incorporate the stuff in this book into an actual adventure and into a campaign. So the first section here talks about a starting or novice adventure, Under Siege, characters at a Crusader Citadel, and a big force of undead attack. And so this is kind of reminding me a lot about how the Game of Thrones has their imminent threat coming from beyond the ice wall. And this is kind of similar, except there's no wall. The Crusader states are the wall, basically. And they are what prevents the rest of the empire from being overrun. So it talks about that a little bit in that section, how the emperor kind of bribed the church to build the Crusader Stage. The emperor kind of gave the church all this land up here in the borderlands between the Northern Reach and the Desolation, and said, protect us, O church, from these abominations. And so the church said, yeah, and built the Crusader States. So, this adventure idea starts off in a Crusader state, and you're defending off one of these waves of undead marching from the deserts. Then takes that campaign seed and pushes it forward into the novice tier, where you are fighting some more undead, trying to figure out where they're coming from. And you got some suggested things here, like a rescue mission, which is expert, tomb raiders, expert or master, and then shipwrecked, which would be, what is that? Crusader States often send airships out, and one of those airships take a dive, and you got to go rescue the airship, or you're on the airship and you got to find your way back to civilization. So along with these campaign seeds, you've got this little sidebar that talks about the actual shadows that would fit well with this campaign setting. And it kind of calls out the Black Sun shadow event, famine and drought shadow event, of course, undead in the Walking Dead shadow event. A lot of them actually would fit well using the Desolation as a backdrop. I'll talk about it a little bit when I get through the rest of the book. I'll talk a little bit about how I would use this in a campaign, and I probably would use this as a guide, actually. But I'll give some more thoughts about that here in a little bit. The next section here talks about different relics that you might find in the Desolation. So you got bone mail, which is some enchanted armor. Probably for a vampire, I'm guessing. And Blood Drinker. While you're injured and wearing this armor, you make attack rolls with one boon. However, at the end of this round, you must get a strength challenge roll, or take 1d3 damage. I'm not really sure, but anyway, you got some enchanted blood mail. Then you got Bone Arrow. Looks like it's a slaying arrow, so that's cool. 86 extra damage. That's pretty potent. Then you have the Cauldron of Death. Of course, what undead-centric region would be complete without the Cauldron of Death, which is like in that Disney movie, the Black Cauldron. That featured a Cauldron of Death where undead were like popping out. And I'm not sure what this is, but it sounds like it. Raise the dead. Any living creature placed in another cauldron pops out as an animated corpse. So there you go. That might be something that you want to shut down. You basically have an undead creating engine here, and you got some dude popping corpses into it, hoping to raise an army. And so you got to shut that shit down. And then the Mantle of the Harrower. So the Harrower is a badass Lich, and he has a mantle that you may be able to find. In fact, you will find it in the adventure at the end of this book, which we will get to in a bit. All right, we have a glitch in the Matrix, which I had a problem with in my last video. There we go. So now we are talking about... it continues on with the Mantle of the Harrower. It's a pretty powerful, actually, pretty powerful item. All right, so especially for an undead, I think if you're wearing it and you're undead, then you're not bothered by the burn by sunlight. So a vampire creature would really dig having this cloak. I'm not sure I'd let them have it, though, because that's taking away a pretty significant weakness. All right, anyway, we go into the creatures of Desolation, and the creatures start off with a beastman known as the Anubian. Now, if you've seen Brendan Fraser's Mummy 2, you've seen the Anubian. They are jackal-like creatures, big, burly and mean. They wield kopeshes, which are these cool-looking curved blades, and they leap at you when they make their attack. So that's kind of creepy, but there you go. If you want to see them in action, check out the Mummy 2. Then you got Cyclopses, or Cyclopses, or just Cyclops. And these are giants, of course, and, with the one eye. And they really don't have a one-eye power. I would add a one-eye power if I was running a Cyclops, I think, or at least if they're like the Cyclops chief or something, might give them an evil eye type power. But they do fall over. That's kind of funny. If they fall, there's a chance that they might land on you, and then you'd be trapped under a giant, which not cool. All right, so what else we got here? We have a Death Lord, or they're also known as Liches. They are difficulty 500, and these are definitely boss characters. They are tough. They have spell defense. They have grave touch. They've got counter spell, void step. They got a power of 6, so they can cast more powerful magic. And they have Epic Recover and Epic Adversary. They also have Lethal Presence, which just punishes living creatures just by being around them. So the Liches are not to be sneezed at. They are bad asses, and you must use one in a game at some point. Desiccated one, that's this creepy thing with the weird tongue. Dust Devil, which is basically a dust tornado. Forsaken, that's another animated corpse type. What makes them special? They have a dust sigil. So looks like they tap their staff on the ground, causing a wriggling black sigil to appear at a point. Dark energy spreads from the ground from that point, and whenever a living creature on the ground and is in the area takes extra damage. So there's that. Keening, the Forsaken Scream. So, that's cool. So let out a scream, and that makes them kind of creepy, and they take damage and immobilize you and deafen you. All right. Giant Scorpions. If you've seen Wrath of the Titans or the first one, Attack of the Titans, no. Clash of the Titans. That's it. The more recent one, not the old one. But the more recent one had giant scorpions in there. So if you want to see them in action, they're pretty tough. Then you have Great Horned Beetle. So Great Horned Beetle, I kind of think about the movie. There's a sci-fi movie that was on a kind of like a desert planet that had the bug creatures, Starship Troopers. That's it. And there's a great beetle-like thing in there. So that could be your inspiration for having a great horned beetle pop out of the sand and start beating up on your characters. And then you have, of course, an undead version. And then we go to the Lamia, or the Lamia, which in this game is this kind of half humanoid, half snake, 4-armed creature. They look cool. And of course, they have double attacks and corrupting whispers and a fearsome glare. That looks like they also have magic. So they're also epic adversaries and epic recovery. They're also pretty tough. They're difficulty 250. So it looks like that could be like a epic, not epic, a expert tier boss character. And of course, what desert region would be complete without a mummy? So here we have mummies, the Mummy's Curse, Fiery Wrath. So everything you could hopefully ask for from a mummy is right here. Except for I like the option to have my mummy be a spellcaster, which there's no option here. Of course, this is just a difficulty 100. If you want to add like a template to make the mummy a caster, you could probably do that fairly easily. All right, Merc. These are kind of like mud creatures. Then you got revenants and salamanders listed here. Talks a little bit about elementals in the sidebar. Then you got sand mites and the swarms that they travel in. And severed. Severed are like, bits of undead body parts that just kind of crawling along the desert, or if they're like a leg, just kind of scooching along. You could be laying there in your sleeping bag trying to catch some shut-eye, and all of a sudden this creepy hand crawls into your tent and starts strangling you. So, severed can be pretty cool. And skeletal steed, of course, there are skeletons of horses out there that will spontaneously pop up and start attacking your characters. So you got to watch out for that. Hate when that happens. Then, of course, in a supplement that features vampires, you have to have a vampire brood. So you create vampires. Vampire, that's what they do. They create vampires. So the vampires have to have minions. And here's what vampire minions look like. And then, of course, what else is in the desert? You got to have a plant creature, and a plant creature in a desert would be a cactus. So you have whisper cactuses or cacti or whatever the plural version of that is, which means that they have thorns, thorny attack, and thorn bursts. All right, so those are all the new creatures in this supplement. And this little sidebar talks about other creatures from the core rulebook that would be appropriate for the setting as well. That's pretty handy. Then the last part of this book is the Dread of the Desolation adventure. And this is an adventure for master characters. So this is a pretty cool adventure in that it features a villain by the name of the Harrower. Now, the Harrower, if you remember from my Men of Gog video, was he was like the right-hand dude of the Witch King. So there was a part in the Witch King's reign when the Witch King was going down into Balgrendia to basically dig out the tick that was the Fairy Queen down there. And he took a big force with him, and he left the Harrower in charge. He said, "Harrower, you're my boy. You are going to watch things while I'm gone. Don't do anything too crazy now." And the Harrower's like, "I got you. No worries." And so Witch King goes south. Harrower sits back in his throne, is kind of like, "I dig this." And he sends all of the Witch King's other servants off on these crazy missions, basically sending them away so that he can consolidate his power. And then he's all like, "I'm the new emperor," until the Witch King comes back. And the Witch King's like, "Dude, not cool." And so the hero was like, "I didn't think you would be coming back. So, somebody's got to rule, right?" And the Witch King's like, "Right, but not cool. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to kill you. Then I'm going to raise you as an undead creature. And I'm going to trap you in a black pyramid so you can ponder the error of your ways." And the hero was like, "It's a fair cop." So that's what happens, and this is what this adventure is. You find the Harrower's tomb, and you fight the Harrower. Now, the problem with this adventure is that the Harrower is basically statted out here as a Death Lord, so a Lich, which again is pretty powerful, but they're only difficulty 500. Whereas if you look at the Men of Gog supplement, the servants of the Witch King were actually difficulty 1000. They had access to some serious firepower in the way of magic. And so they kind of shortchanged him here. I just kind of chalk it up to the fact that this came out several years before the Men of Gog supplement came out. And so a little bit of a disconnect. I think it would be okay to, boost the Death Lord up to difficulty 1000 and just kind of incorporate some of the powers that they had in life into their Lich form. So that's basically what I would do. Okay, so that is the supplement. So it's a really cool supplement. I definitely recommend it. I think it has very cool options for the Desolation, and it's a very dangerous place, as we've already talked about. So how would I use this as a campaign? So I haven't really thought about it much, other than my Weird West campaign, which it really isn't a Desolation campaign. That's more of a Weird West campaign that's just set close to the Desolation. So I kind of have those ideas separate. So for a Tombs of the Desolation campaign, I think what I would do is I would take the adventures that are already in existence for Tales of the Desolation. This is a series of adventures that came out right after the Tombs of the Desolation came out, to kind of help use that supplement in actual adventures. So these adventures were written by these four gentlemen down here: Jerry Leneve, Andrew Follier or whatever. Sorry for butchering your names, Nat Webb and Greg Marks. And there's four adventures in here that are set in and around the Desolation, but they're all expert tier adventures. So what I would do if I were creating a campaign is I would use these. I mean, this is a whole tier of adventures that are already written for you. So what I would first do is come up with an overarching theme. And the overarching theme, I think, would be the Harrower, because we already have an adventure for him. That's the capstone. That is the final boss of this campaign. You already got the adventure. It's in the Tombs of the Desolation book. So here's four adventures. That's 5 adventures. There's already 5 adventures written for you in this campaign. All you have to do now is come up with the starting adventure, 2 novice tier adventures, and 3 more master tier adventures, and you have a full campaign. In fact, what I would challenge folks out there to do is create this stuff and put it out on the Disciples of the Demon Lord out there on DriveThruRPG. Why not? Why haven't you done it already, is what I'm asking. In fact, if you don't do it soon, I may have to do it myself, because this just is too big an opportunity to pass up. So there you go. That's what I would do. I would incorporate all the stuff in the Tombs of the Desolation. I would incorporate these 4 adventures, and then I would create my own adventures using the Harrower as the big bad guy. So the Harrower, he's the dude that's calling the shots. He's come back to life, or he's awakened from a long sleep. He can't escape his tomb, which is why he's stuck there, but he has called powerful undead to him, and also other creatures, maybe more men of Gog. And he's using those minions to do his bidding, and causing problems for the Crusader Stage and for the Northern Reach. So the heroes have to put a stop to all the minions, but then they have to put a stop to the brains behind it, which is the Harrower. And you use the adventure in the Tombs of the Desolation to finish off the campaign. So I haven't read these 4 adventures here, so you would have to tie those into that concept, which I'm sure probably wouldn't be too difficult. But again, I haven't read the adventures, so I'm not really sure what the adventures entail. Simply because I, haven't run a campaign in the Desolation, so that's why I've skimmed them, but I really couldn't tell you what the adventures are about. But again, shouldn't be too difficult to incorporate these adventures into that type of campaign. Okay, so that's it for my walkthrough of the Tombs of the Desolation, and with a shout out to the Tales of the Desolation here. So that's pretty much it. So hopefully this video turned out okay. I'm going to listen to it this time before actually posting it. But as always, I do encourage you all to leave me some comments, give me a thumbs up, like my video, subscribe to my video. I'm trying to get the word out about Shadow the Demon Lord, and the way you do that is by making content that people that are curious and do little YouTube searches for Shadow the Demon Lord and see what pops up. Right now, if you do it, what you see is a lot of interviews with Rob Schwab, and you see a lot of live action or actual play videos. Most of them are old. There are a few current ones, a few of them in different languages. So not really a whole lot of content of people just talking about the game and doing deep dives into this material. So that's the reason why I do these videos, is to give folks something to watch to get them enticed into wanting to jump into this most excellent game. So do me a favor, do me a solid, go out to YouTube, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my video, or subscribe to my my videos if you haven't already, and that helps to bump me up in the algorithm so that when somebody does a Shadow of the Demon Lord search, one of my videos pop up alongside those actual plays and the Rob Schwab interview videos. So there you go. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I want to thank you all for watching once again, and I will continue with this series on my upcoming videos. So until then, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching.